James Arness was deeply despised by him. Those who were close to Clint Walker expressed that sentiment. For years, fans were perplexed as to why. Each man's life was a story. During the prime of television, both were huge stars. Both of them were beloved by many. They were always competing with Clint Walker, despite their smiles and cowboy hats. Unfortunately, we have learnt the reason. Once you hear the beginning, you will comprehend the reason behind it. Clint Walker was one of the lucky few who were born into fame. Norman Eugene Walker was born on May 30, 1927, in Hartford, Illinois, and his given name was Norman. A little mill town it was. The oil industry was his dad's employer. Despite the hardships of the Great Depression, his Czech mother ensured that the family had sufficient funds. Everything was complicated. Even as a young boy, Clint had a job. Even at the tender age of 16, he had already begun his career as a coal hauler, barge worker, and reclamation plant shoveler. He worked all these jobs so he could provide for his family. He also did not sit around and wait for WHR to begin. Clint enlisted in the Merchant Marines at the tender age of 17, having falsely claimed his age. He completed high school at the same time as most boys his age were sailing dangerous waters. He was tough as nails because he lived that way. His experience as a truck driver, private investigator, and bouncer all contributed to his tough exterior. Nobody dared to mess with Clint Walker. Despite his 6 feet 6 inch stature, broad shoulders, and deep voice, acting was never part of the plan, at least not initially. For financial reasons, he relocated to Las Vegas and took a job as a hotel security guard. That was the turning point. Soon after talent agents noticed him and thought he was cute, he got a call from Hollywood. It was 1955 when Clint hit it big. He was cast as the lead in Warner Brothers' new television western, Cheyenne. In the very first hour-long television western, Clint played the lead role. He brought the role of the reclusive cowboy who helped others, stood up to evildoers, and did the right thing, Cheyenne Bodie, to life. He kept to himself since he saw no use in doing so. No one could have questioned Clint's poise, size, or attractiveness. Anarchy ensued on the show. The public was absolutely enamored. Clint Walker was an icon and a marvel. His likeness appeared in comic books, on lunchboxes, and in fan organizations. In Cheyenne's eyes, ABC finally joined CBS and NBC in terms of importance. In 1957, it was among the top 10 shows in multi-networked areas. However, the level of competition becomes apparent at this point. In 1955, CBS broadcasted the pilot episode of Gunsmoke. Tall and solemn, James Arness was the show's leading man. He played the part of Marshal Matt Dillon. He resembled Clint as well. Arness stood at a height of 6'7". In addition to his powerful jaw and steady hand, he held the screen with an air of casual ease. 2 enormous ones. 2 cowboy heroes. 2 television actors whose shows premiered in the same year. The parallels began immediately. Who presented a better show? Who was stronger? Who was ruler of the West? You can see where this is going. Clint Walker, too, was a character. To understand why, you must be aware of how James Arness landed the role. John Wayne was initially approached by the Gunsmoke producers to play the role of Matt Dillon, but he declined due to his aversion to television. Instead of walking away, Wayne pointed to James Arness and declared, "This is your guy." CBS took note and eventually cast Wayne in the role. Wayne even created a special introduction for the pilot episode in which he introduced Arness, saying, "This is James Arness." The moment someone says he's going to be a big star, everything changes. Arness became Hollywood's golden boy in an instant. CBS supported him, news outlets gave him good reviews, viewers did the same. So put yourself in Clint Walker's shoes. This guy worked his tail off for everything he had. No connections, no Hollywood coach, no money. He was caught while working as a hotel guard, but he learnt fast on his own. Now he's staring at Arness, who had John Wayne offer him the lead role. That's going to hurt. Cheyenne was a smash hit by the end of the 1958 TV season, becoming ABC's second most popular show overall. Clint Walker turned an hour-long adult western into a hit show that everyone had to watch. The show's success allowed ABC to compete with the bigger networks, and viewers adored Clint for his humility and lack of cockiness. He was tough, honest, and fair, just like Cheyenne Bodie. However, on the other side of the spectrum, another storm was on the horizon. Gunsmoke was a whole business. The numbers added up. 7 years to make 107 episodes of Cheyenne, but 20 seasons of Gunsmoke produced a record-breaking 635 episodes, almost 3 times Bonanza's number of episodes. Arness, on the other hand, was always the one playing the lead role. There were no breaks, no contract standoffs, and only one cowboy hat. The brand always looked the same. Clint was aware of what was happening. His show had made history, but Arness was getting all the credit. Walker felt like his success was being eroded as Gunsmoke continued. With each award and huge rating, Clint pondered what could have been and what should have been. The worst part? It hurts to be compared in that way. But it wasn't just about numbers or fame. Clint lost to someone who, in his view, never worked as hard for it. Clint got his start working on oil rigs, driving trucks, and loading ships during the war. He was the real deal. James Arness, on the other hand, had more money when he started out. John Wayne cast him as Matt Dillon, and CBS rolled out the red carpet. While Clint fought for basic respect from his company, Arness had all of his positions locked up. What truly distinguished them was their off-camera personas. Despite his physical stature, Clint Walker exuded an air of calm composure. Those who had the pleasure of meeting him at West Coast gatherings recalled him as amiable, humorous, and courteous. He never considered himself superior to others. He would sign autographs for those who requested them, put his arm around your shoulder to make you feel at ease when you requested a picture, and his co-stars even spoke highly of him. "The most honest man I've ever met," someone remarked, and it wasn't an exaggeration. That was his way of life. Let us now examine Arness and draw parallels. Actress Amanda Blake, who played Miss Kitty on Gunsmoke, once referred to him as the mystery man because he refused to let reporters on set. Clint never showed up to any TV award shows, but he was kind and never got close to his coworkers. When he was free, he surfed, sailed, or wrote poetry alone. Some thought it was arrogant, but Clint felt it was a wall. As a child, he had been poor and had worked hard for every dollar. He always remembered his humble beginnings and how fortunate he was to be on TV. It bothered him when he saw Arness distant and uncaring. Clint believed it was important to be present, to greet people, and to treat the audience with care. He didn't think Arness shared those beliefs. Some close friends had told him that Arness thought less of him. Even though it wasn't true, Clint believed James thought he was less intelligent, skilled, and important than James. It stuck with him once it took hold. Things like that don't disappear. They only get harder. Most of that tension could be seen at a famous picture session in the late 1950s. All of the main Western actors were called together by the major networks for a publicity stunt. A group picture of TV's best cowboys dressing up and aiming their six-shooters in a fake standoff was meant to be entertaining. Clint Walker from Cheyenne, James Arness from Gunsmoke, James Garner from Maverick, Richard Boone from Have Gun Will Travel, Robert Horton from Wagon Train, and John Payne from The Restless Gun were all on that team. Most of them were smiling, but 2 were not. Clint Walker smiled, but it seemed strained and tight. It was hard for James Arness. It was clear that Clint was feeling the same. There was silence. No drama, no noise, just the realness of the boundary between them. It wasn't an act, the frost was real. Clint never told anyone about it. He never trash-talked Arness in interviews, never wrote sad autobiographies, and was polite but distant when asked about Gunsmoke. When he could, he avoided the subject. When he couldn't, he gave broad statements and changed the subject. Those who knew him, though, heard the truth. He just didn't think much of Arness as a person, a close friend made it clear. That's when the story takes a sharp turn. Clint Walker didn't just feel forgotten, he felt hurt. In 1958, when Cheyenne was at its peak, Clint asked Warner Brothers for a better deal. He did all the work. People really liked the show. The money didn't match, though. The show and Clint's face were making the company a lot of money. He was in comic books, toys, and banners, but he wasn't getting paid enough. After that, he pushed back. Warner Brothers refused to negotiate a new contract, so Clint abruptly left the set. The studio was taken aback that he would not be able to participate in the entire 1958-59 season, so they aired reruns and made up for it with spin-offs. Ty Hardin was cast to play a similar role, confusing fans who wrote in asking, "Where is Cheyenne Bodie?" But Warner Brothers kept trying. The longer Clint was absent, the more buzz there was. By the end of the contract standoff in 1959, Clint Walker returned to Cheyenne, much to the delight of his fans and good ratings, but something had changed behind the scenes. The magic wasn't the same, and Clint knew it. The show did pay more, but it was because of the advertisers' pressure that Warner Brothers finally gave in after nearly a year. He was back in the saddle, yes. Behind the scenes, though, things were not going well between him and Warner Brothers. After the fact, he spoke about how the show made him feel like an animal in a cage, that every day on set was the same, that the scripts didn't challenge him, that the production schedules didn't leave him any room to breathe, and that he never felt appreciated by the company. He wasn't shy about telling the reporters he was ready to leave, that the network setup was too limited, that watching TV all the time killed his imagination, that his voice showed signs of exhaustion, and that Clint didn't look back after Cheyenne ended in 1963. However, who was still going strong? Yes, Gunsmoke had already aired over 250 episodes by that point. James Arness, the steady sheriff of Dodge City, was still in the thick of things. The show never paused. CBS never had to rush to find shows to fill time. There were no issues with public contracts. There was no behind-the-scenes drama. Arness just kept shooting season after season, and the network was fully behind her. That had to hurt. Gunsmoke was becoming a cultural classic while Clint was fighting for fair treatment off-screen and watching his show lose steam. By the early 1960s, it had become more than just a show. It was ingrained in American culture. Clint must have felt the system had chosen a victor. Arness was both an enemy and a symbol of the things Clint never truly had: status, stability, and protection. What is Clint Walker to do with this? He can't defy authority, so he turns his attention to James Arness, the one who benefited the most. It doesn't matter that Arness never touched Clint, mocked him, or even mentioned him in the media. Clint didn't feel the need to speak out. It pains him to watch the truth unfold year after year. Rumors circulate among friends that the resentment remained. He never lost his temper, lash out, or start a public brawl. However, if the subject turned to James Arness, Clint would withdraw. James Arness was someone who Clint never lost his temper with, but who carried with him a quiet anxiety that persisted throughout his life. The strangest thing is that most people who knew Arness speculate that he was so reclusive that he had no idea how much Clint despised him. As a result, Arness avoided large social events, avoided Hollywood parties, and only gave interviews when absolutely necessary. He rarely appeared in public, and his co-stars on Gunsmoke remarked that he was difficult to get to know. It wasn't arrogance, that's simply his character. However, Clint felt it came across as arrogant. Just like Arness, everyone else thought he was better than them, as if he didn't have to work for it. This infuriated Clint, who had risen from humble beginnings to stardom in television. The issue wasn't monetary or numerical, it centered around respect. In Clint's perspective, James Arness never showed respect. What's worse, they were never on the same level in business. As one Gunsmoke fan put it, Clint Walker was skiing at California's Mammoth Mountain in May 1971. Being an accomplished outdoorsman, this wasn't a weekend getaway for Clint, but he lost control on one run downhill and crashed hard. Suddenly, his own ski pole went straight through his chest and into his heart, a shocking development that no one could have predicted. Upon arrival at the hospital, doctors declared him dead. Yes, they are pretty much dead. Nothing. This is not a Hollywood plot. It's true. Clint Walker, who had a straight heart attack that should have killed him immediately, miraculously survived emergency surgery. What's even more remarkable is that he was back to normal in 2 months. This man, who had fought studio lawyers and TV bosses, is now fighting death and winning. His star continued to rise as his admirers proclaimed him to be indestructible, a true cowboy, and a man who would never back down. One would think that such a public endorsement would put old grudges to rest, but they remained. Clint's strained relationship with Arness persisted, even after he had a stick smashed into his chest. When the subject of Gunsmoke came up, Clint would nod and offer a kind remark, but otherwise, everyone was in it with us. Clint remained silent. On the other hand, when James Arness passed away in 2011 at the age of 88, a long time after his birth, fans expressed their condolences through online messages. His co-stars praised him as a trustworthy actor, and even John Wayne's family paid tribute. In contrast, when it came to Clint, there was complete and utter silence. Clint passed away 7 years later. He was 90 years old, and even at that age, the story of his feud with Arness lingered in his mind. Some say he let it go as he got older, but others insist he never did. Whatever the case may be, the two Western television icons never reconciled. They never performed or interviewed together. What does this tell you? It was more than just a feud between famous people. It was real. It was about them. Years of pride, anger, and comparison went into making it. Clint Walker didn't like how Cheyenne got more help than Gunsmoke. John Wayne supported James Arness, had 20 seasons, and left a legacy. Clint, on the other hand, had 7 seasons, a nasty studio fight, and a career that went in a different direction too soon. That doesn't make Clint a bad guy, it makes him a person. It's hard not to feel something when you look at someone who had an easier road after you've worked your way up from nothing and earned all your fame. Especially when that person gets everything you fought for and more. Clint Walker and James Arness were really just two sides of the same coin. Another was the hermit, a reclusive man with a good heart who had to fight for every opportunity that came his way. The third was the police officer, a Hollywood star who was considered by the studio but never had to speak out. Both of these characters transformed American society. Clint will forever be remembered as Cheyenne Bodie, the courageous cowboy who fights for justice. Arness will always hold Marshal Matt Dillon in high regard, the rock who kept Dodge City under control. Despite their differences, their names will forever be linked, not because of friendship, but because they shaped the Western hero in a particular way. All of this happened simultaneously.